Thank you, Madam Chair. Um, Good to have this discussion. I know when I travel uh, all the 92 counties in Indiana, I hear three themes constantly. Workforce, we're not here to talk about that. Affordable housing and rural broadband. And that's not to mention what I think is probably the biggest issue we should be grappling with, and it's the high cost of healthcare. Because in running my own company, it was the thing that ended up coming into the C-suite because it never seems to get any better. I think that's because we got a very uncompetitive healthcare industry. Let's focus here. Let's focus on appropriations. Let's put a little context into the whole idea of appropriating. Since I joined the Senate, we've appropriated more dollars outside of the appropriations process in this committee than within it. This includes more than $3.8 trillion we spent on a bipartisan COVID bill, $1.9 trillion on ARPA. Additionally, the infrastructure bill increased discretionary spending by $415 billion over the previous highway funding baseline, adding a net deficit of $256 billion. Put this in context. When it came through 0809, we spent $800 to $900 billion. And that was a real systemic economic issue. And that seems like chump change in this day and age. I think the process is broken. We don't do regular order. I mean, we're talking about continuing resolutions because we have not had the ability and the political will to get this done by September 30th of 2021. I mean, it is a system that has just gone completely out of control. And I'll put one other doozy in there. Just a little over 3 years ago, we were $18 trillion in debt. Now we're nearly 30. And I think the American public needs to realize that coming out of World War II, the highest percentage of debt we had ever taken on as a country, we were savers, we were investors. We paid all of that off and built the interstate highway system. That seems like a big story of fiction now when we've built in trillion, now close to 1.5 trillion structural deficits, largely driven by the gimmick of the biggest things we spend money on here would be not on discretionary, but non-discretionary. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, other things we so kind of ingeniously put on autopilot and don't do budgeting regular order anymore. What do you think needs to be done? We need rural broadband. We'd be much smarter block granting that to the states because you know what they do? They have balanced budget amendments. You know what they do? I was on the budget, or on Ways and Means and Roads and Transportation in Indiana for 3 years. You always make your ends meet because you're either statutorily or by constitution have to do it. I'd like your opinion, not on broadband. How do you get this back into balance when in my 3 years here, so many people come to this institution wanting more and don't even realize that the worst news is down the road when the Medicare Trust Fund goes completely bust in 4.5 years after paying into it since the 60s. Social Security in 10 or 11 years. Actuarially, we've known it all. We have no political will. I think someone in this room told me that in one of our first budget meetings. That's what we lack mostly. I'd like your opinion. You're in the midst of it. We're feeling no current pain. How do we get this institution back into a respectable place where people can count on it in the long run?
Well, thank you, Senator. I would say as a governor, I had to balance a budget every year and run a state every year and balance a budget. And so I have had that experience. I'll also say 2008, 2009, the economy struggled for 10, people really struggled for 10 years after that. I was a governor in the wake of that. And for years, we had to make cuts because that stimulus wasn't quite big enough. And so that's why President Biden has really been leaning forward to say, let's make investments. The issue that I'm here to talk about, broadband, I don't think of it as spending money. I think about it as investing. I used to run a business too. These are investments, whether you're investing in roads or bridges and broadband, childcare so women can work. These are productivity enhancing, GDP improving, worker enabling investments. I'm all for accountability. I'm all for responsibility. I'm all for transparency. But I do think we need to invest in growth.
Real quickly, because time has expired, not by much, we generally go beyond this, but you're correct. A return on a tangible investment makes sense. But you got to remember what's driving our current deficits would not be for tangible investments like infrastructure that you're referring to. When you start making the argument that an intangible investment is somehow part of what we need to do, that's more what I'd call spending. You need to do some of that. The thing that kept your state's finances in order was probably your good stewardship along with some really good guardrails. And until we have that here, your job is going to be very tough. Future generations, I think, have a lot to worry about what this looks like 5 to 10 years down the road. Thank you.